Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with me, your host, Stephen Wallis. Cricket is a sport that can build bridges and break down barriers, and this episode is a perfect example of that. My guest is Father Eamonn O'Higgins, the manager of the Vatican cricket team who toured England last summer. I spoke to Father Eamonn in late September about their Light of Faith tour, which included matches against the England Over-60s side. We discussed the history of Vatican cricket and what the tour meant to them, both on and, more importantly, off the field. Welcome, Father. Thanks for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion to talk about the Vatican cricket team's Light of Faith tour of the UK this summer.
Well, it's great to be here, Stephen. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy to talk about. It was the 10th tour that we've had. We call them Light of Faith because they are priests, seminarians living and working here in Rome that represent the Vatican. And this year, yes, we were in England for 8 days on tour.
The other person I must thank is Richard Merriman, the former captain now of the England Over-60s team, who put me in touch with you and who played against the Vatican team. I'd like to start by asking you a question. Not many people would connect the Vatican with cricket.
That's right. It's sort of, in a certain sense, incongruous. But then when you think about it, well, why not? Officially, the team started 10 years ago. It was the idea of the former Australian ambassador to the Holy See, John McCarthy, with a committee and myself, who decided. We had the idea of playing the Archbishop of Canterbury's 11 in England. That was 10 years ago, 2014. And that was the official start. We'd been playing cricket here in Rome before that, but that was the official start of the Vatican St. Peter's cricket team. And we've been going for 10 years now. And yes, we've been to England 3 times, to Portugal, Spain, Malta, Kenya, Argentina so far.
Because I know Pope Francis is a football fan and also played basketball, I think.
He is, obviously being Argentinian, football there is very popular, but it is known that as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he went to bless the cricket ground in Buenos Aires during his time as Archbishop. You may know that there was a large English presence in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, perhaps less so after 1982, but there was a lot of English tradition in Buenos Aires before then, so cricket was not something unknown.
Before we talk about the tour, I just wanted to ask you, firstly, what's your role yourself at the Vatican?
Well, in fact, I don't work in the Vatican. I teach philosophy at one of the pontifical universities here in Rome, the Regina Apostolorum, and just about 10 minutes north of the Vatican. That's my official work. And I also help a little bit in the spiritual guidance of some seminarians. And with the team, I'm, well, the manager, which I define as try to manage the team. We have a great coach, an Australian layman, Dane Kirby, Dr. Dane Kirby now. He's finished his doctorate in philosophy. And he and I have been running the team now for these last years.
And how did your own love of cricket begin?
Well, I was born in England in Sussex, and then my family moved back to Ireland when I was about 5 or so. And so I had a connection with things in England and sports. Back then, English sports in Ireland were, what we saw on television, the football team and so on. Well, that was big. And of course, cricket as well. Then at university in Trinity College in Dublin, I played a little bit of cricket for the Ramblers and was a very informal team. But Trinity College in the centre of Dublin has a very nice cricket ground. And that's where we played a little bit. I've worked then as a priest in Mexico, where cricket is sort of still unknown. But coming back here to Italy in 2003, working at a seminary where there were a lot of seminarians from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. That's when my love of cricket sort of revived.
Did you have any cricketing heroes when you were growing up playing cricket?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they were the big names. It was Bob Willis and Ian Botham, Mike Brearley, Jeff Boycott, all the names that we all know. I guess in particular, Ian Botham, just a sensational player and an all-rounder. And then, of course, the Chappell brothers from Australia, and then Viv Richards, the West Indies, Gordon Greenidge. Yeah, those were the big names that we all know.
And it's a game, I guess, you love the values of and the history of the game.
Yes, I'm Irish, but cricket was played in Ireland in the 19th century in the estates and so on. So it wasn't something new uh, to Ireland. Yes, I do. Cricket, it's a team game. At the same time, each one feels his own responsibility as a batsman, as a bowler. It's your contribution to the team. It's basically no contact sport, so there's a sense of doing things right, of fair play, because the rules are clear and there's not much margin for what they call now the dark arts, or playing underhand or whatever. And also, you find in cricket, which is perhaps one of the few professional sports, what they call the spirit of cricket, where you play according to the rules, but also with a certain sense of honor and chivalry. I think you still find that certainly on in professional sport, it's a little bit harder because of the pressures that are there. But we try to play that way, and we've had so many examples of other teams who have shown us that spirit of cricket.
Thank you for that. Let's just now talk about the tour. I know you had you played 4 games, 2 of which were against the England seniors, the over-60s side. And I've mentioned him already in the podcast, Richard Merriman. And before we go any further, I'd just like you to hear what Richard said when I asked him about the 2 games he played, or the over-60s played, against the Vatican team. Richard, you have played cricket all around the world. Did you ever think you would play against a team from the Vatican?
It was a complete surprise, a very pleasant surprise, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Reflections on the 2 matches you played at Wormsley. Couldn't have been a better place to play.
It was the perfect ground on the perfect day. 2 teams very committed, 2 teams very eager to win. And yes, it couldn't have been better. It was a perfect day.
What were they like as a team to play against?
Youthful, energetic, eager. And as many of them came from the Indian subcontinent, they were steeped in their cricketing heritage. And so, as a consequence, they were very capable sides.
Nice words there from Richard.
Yes, and I echo those sentiments. We did have a great day there. Thankfully, the weather was fine. I think it was generally sunny. The Wormsley estate and the cricket ground there is just wonderful. And we had 2 great matches against 2 sides of the England Over-60s, with Richard's side and then a second side. And we played after lunch. Richard was kind in his words. The England seniors won both matches. I felt we didn't quite play as well as we could have. But just to set the record straight, Richard was humble enough not to mention the results. But I've got to be honest here. But there was a great friendship with both teams of the England 60s, and a memorable day.
I think the second game went to the last over, so it was very close.
It was close, and that was they were good matches.
You then went on to Arundel, and I think there's a connection with the Duke of Norfolk. You were playing against St Mary's University.
That's right. On Monday, we travelled down, left early. We were staying at Gower Street in London. We travelled down to Arundel. We were met by the bishop, the Catholic bishop, Bishop Richard Moth, who had sort of organised the day. We were given a tour of Arundel Castle, which, as you know, has been in England since 1667, and all the history associated with the Howard family. We also met the Duke of Norfolk. He was there. We had a wonderful lunch. We were playing a team from St Mary's University, Twickenham. Professor Richard Booth came down with them, and we played at the Arundel ground after lunch. It was another very close match. This time we won. One of our players injured himself. He broke a collarbone. We had to take him to Chichester Hospital, and in the end, then he had to go back early from the tour. But we finished the day with Holy Mass at the cathedral with Bishop Richard Moth, and then we had dinner with him right beside it, both teams together. It was a spectacular day.
Next up, then you went to play against the King's 11 at Windsor Castle.
Yes, that was also quite an event. That was on Wednesday, and we left London, arrived to visit the Dean of St George's Chapel, Bishop Dean Cockworth, who was very gracious to us and received us in his living room with his wife, Charlotte, and we had coffee. We signed the visitor's book, and then he had arranged for us a tour of St George's Chapel. We were able to pay our respects to the late Queen, whom we had met when we were on tour in 2018. A very poignant moment because, as everybody said, and it was our experience as well, she was a very down-to-earth lady, and she met each one of our team. When Queen Elizabeth sat down for the photograph with our team, we have these yellow jackets, which are the official color of the Vatican. She said, "Oh, had I known, I would have worn yellow as well." So it was a poignant moment for us to pray for her and to remember her great example and her public service to the people of Britain. So that was right before lunch. We headed to the ground, the Frogmore ground. There was a beautiful hog roast, a large number of people there. There was a fundraising activity for a particular cause of the British Army. And then we played our match, and that also went down to the last over. The funny little story, Prince Andrew was there, and I was sitting under the scoreboard, and he came over when the King's 11 were doing particularly well and sort of asked me with a smile on his face, how are things going? How's the match going? Knowing full well that the King's 11 were doing really well. Well, then we took 2 quick wickets and the whole thing changed quickly. So I sort of said, "Well, Your Royal Highness, how are we doing now?" So he smiled, and yes, it went down to the last over. The King's 11 won, and we had presentations. The Bishop Paul Wright, the royal chaplain, was there as well. In fact, he had organized the match, and it was just a wonderful day. The setting there was wonderful, and at the very end, then there was a band of the British Army, and that played a number of tunes, and that you couldn't really ask for more.
Now, sounds wonderful. Cricket-wise, over then the 4 games, how did the players feel about the tour and the reception they received from the other 4 teams or 3 teams?
Well, it was. We were made to feel very welcome It's a great thing, and that's what cricket teaches you. The way cricket can be played is that it's a competitive sport. You play to win, and at the same time, the friendship and being able to win or being able to lose, and to congratulate the other team or to accept the congratulations of the other team. That's a great lesson. And we found there was no antagonism, there was no bitter rivalry. There were close matches and they were well fought, but within that spirit of friendship and communion, that's great. And that's really, some people will say, "Oh, competition is not good," and it can be when it's played in that context, and that's the way it was for us.
Yes, because I read a quote by Pope Francis when he spoke about sport. Sport can build bridges, break down barriers, and foster peaceful relations. And that, in essence, is what your tour is all about, isn't it?
Yes, it is. As I mentioned, all our team are priests, that's ordained ministers in the Catholic Church, or seminarians training for the priesthood. They're here in Rome from between 3 to 5 years, and each goes back to his own diocese in the world, wherever he comes from, to continue and give his life as a priest. And for us, then, cricket is a way of expressing and trying to achieve exactly what you mentioned and what Pope Francis said: to build bridges, to build communion, to break down barriers. It's amazing. We've played interfaith matches over the years. We've had a Muslim team here to Rome. We've played interdenominational with the Archbishop of Canterbury's team several times here and there in England. And we also, one year, 2018, we played an interfaith match at the nursery ground in Lords, where we had the Anglicans and ourselves against a team of Muslims, Sikhs, Jewish religion, and that was a wonderful event. And it's so great when, as you say, sport has that capacity of expressing one's common humanity and getting over stereotypes, or at times a type of antagonism that can sometimes be prevalent in our societies.
So your team is changing, evolving every 3 or 5 years then, yeah.
That's a good observation, Stephen. Yes, which on the one hand is fine. It means that new players come in and they can and continue on the mission. It makes forming a team a little bit more of a challenge, because you get some players, and our coach Dane, who's done a great job with each one, he builds them up and they get to a good standard, as good as we can, and then they have to leave and new players come in. So it's a challenge, but that's the way it is. And what it does mean is that more players get to play, more priests and seminarians are able to play. It's not that you have the same team for 10 years.
Let's hear again from Richard Merriman. I asked him about the importance of these types of games, and this is what he had to say. Looking back then, how important do you think games like these are to be played?
I think in a world which is full of anger and aggression, to see the benefits of sport and how sport can be that binding unit that brings everybody together and heals differences and allows folk to have things in common. The power of sport cannot be underestimated. And I think, the work of the Vatican cricket team, or whether you look at the work of Christians in sport here in the UK, the work that they do and the way in which they reach out and build bridges and create friendships and harmony is absolutely so important. And, hats off to Father Eamonn and the Vatican team for the work that they're doing.
Again, some nice thoughts from the former England Over-60s captain, Richard Merriman.
Yes, Richard is very kind. And I can only reiterate that one of the things that I was most happy about, in particular this last tour, was the priestly example of each one of our team. It's not easy for them going to England, playing on a different surface. Social matches, public occasions are fine. It's also pressure, and these are young guys. They're not perhaps used to high-profile matches. Apart from our cricket, we've had Holy Mass every day on our tour, and going and coming back from our matches, we've been able to pray together, and our meals and so on. There was a great atmosphere and sort of priestly identity. That's the core behind everything else, and I think that's what Richard is expressing. And certainly from our point of view, that's where it all starts. And that you would hope then that that becomes evident in our cricket and in the many other things we were able to visit, the Houses of Parliament, one of the royal palaces, Westminster Abbey, and then of course Arundel. And also we had Holy Mass in Westminster Cathedral on Sunday, with the priest there responsible. And one of the amazing things, it was the 12 o'clock, the sung mass, I think, which is a fairly long mass, and the cathedral was full. And one of our team from India sort of remarked on this. He said, we hear that, in Europe, a type of radical secularism, that people don't believe in the Lord God, or they've lost, faith and so on. He was amazed to see that in the center of London, on a Sunday, 12 noon, to see the cathedral full. And I think it was, we tried to give our own small witness and example, but the people of London taught us something there, that perhaps there's more to life than at times what we're led to believe. And people have a greater depth to them than perhaps the public messages that would give another image.
That's very comforting to hear. It must have been a fantastic experience for these young men on the tour, both obviously on the field, but more importantly off the field.
Yes, it was. It was a privilege for all of us visiting St. George's Chapel, these places that we were able to visit. One lovely moment was that we were waiting to celebrate Mass in Westminster Cathedral, and the choir, a lot of the young boys, lined up beside us. And the priest, who had organized Mass for us there, asked all the boys, do you know who these priests are? And they all sort of shouted, oh, that's the Vatican cricket team. And it was just, it was lovely to see that we meant something to someone. And hopefully that's what we're about. It's, we're not a glorious team, or we're never going to be able to play, county level cricket. But hopefully, who we are, and each one of our team, in some way we can express that publicly, and perhaps in some way be a sign of hope for others.
Where next then for the tour? Will you be going somewhere next year?
Hopefully, Stephen, we haven't exactly decided. There have been a couple of vague offers. We did receive a donation recently, which will make it possible to travel next year. We're open to different possibilities. What we like to do, as far as possible, is to combine good cricket matches, perhaps with worthy causes, and then also to be able to do some small pastoral work where we go as well. So we're open to that. And I noticed that cricket now is an Olympic sport. It'll be played at the Olympics in Los Angeles. Perhaps it's not beyond imagination if there's room for a representative side from the Vatican that perhaps we wouldn't qualify in cricket terms, but the Vatican, the Holy See, is an independent nation. It's a state, an international state. Perhaps a little representation there could also be a message. Who knows?
And I'm sure everyone will welcome the team in those bright yellow jackets. Thank you very much, Father Eamonn, for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you, Stephen. And maybe this is off the record, or if you want it on the record, that's okay. But just my apologies for taking so long to get back to you. August, I was out a lot from Rome, and it was hard to know where I'd be and so on. I'm just really happy that I was able to take up your invitation. I was able to send you the small album of photographs that I hope will be of use to you. And anything else that you may need, Stephen, I'm happy to help. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, thank you again.
God bless, Stephen. Thank you.